But first, the biggest game on the calendar for this Saturday was number 7 Penn State at number 3 Ohio State, and the Buckeyes took care of business 20-12. Did not go the way that many envisioned it would go, but I got to say, I was impressed by Ohio State in this one, and I want to start with this. Under James Franklin, Penn State walked into the shoe 0-9 versus AP top 10 opponents. They moved on the road, and they moved to 0-10 on the road against AP top 10 opponents. But it was Ryan Day who really needed the win in this one. And I say that because going into this season, there was heat on Ryan Day's seat. I thought that was asinine and ridiculous, as the man was a missed field goal away from basically being national champ in 2022. But heading into this one, you could not afford to take a loss to Penn State at home and expect to contend for the Big Ten championship, or at least it would be very, very difficult with a surging Michigan on the way. But Ryan Day, who needed the win, leaned on his defense to get things done. Here's what he had to say about that.
No, I thought our defense played unbelievable. Lights out. Really shouldn't be putting them in that situation at the end of the game like that. I thought we did a great job up front. We won the line of scrimmage. Our guys on the back end got their hands on passes, kept battling. The defense won the game today, and they did an unbelievable job.
They did do an unbelievable job. They've done the best job that I've seen an Ohio State defense do since 2019, when they had the Predator playing defensive end and some inside linebacker, because Chase Young was just that type of individual. But you get the point here. Ohio State finally has a defense that feels like it's national championship caliber. The Buckeyes showed that against Penn State, holding them to just 2.8 yards per play. But I was really interested on the money downs, right? Going into this game, who was going to win third down, who was going to be able to run the football, if anybody at all. And to begin with, both defenses were playing lights out football. By the end of the first quarter, both the Ohio State offense and the Penn State offense had combined to go for just 1 of 8 on third down. But while Ohio State found a way to move the ball, the Buckeye defense continued to absolutely control Penn State on the money downs. Again, it's kind of ridiculous that we got to take it this far, but we do. Penn State had 15 third down conversions before they converted 1. The game was basically over when they got their first third down conversion of the entire day. 1 for 16 on third down. That came 16th attempt, and you're down 20-6 late in the fourth quarter. A lot of that had to do with Jim Knowles and that defense really not letting Drew Aller and those wide receivers do anything at all. These numbers are just awful for Drew Aller and great for Ohio State. I'll put it the way that Drew Aller put about his play. He said this about how did he play. He said, I sucked. And they said, why are you being so hard on yourself? He said, because I absolutely did. 18 of 42 for 191. You could see how he is not thrilled about that. Quietly, still a guy that hadn't thrown an interception all year and hadn't actually fumbled the football all year. But Penn State rushed for just 49 yards, and that was unexpected. I thought, if anything, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen behind that offensive line, led by perhaps a first-round draft pick in Olu Fashanu, were going to be able to run the football because that's what they had been good at. But they got nothing and liked it. Judge Smales style out here, 49 rush yards, but it's also being able to dial up a pass rush when you got them in those third and long situations because you've been able to stymie the run. And I was really just taking a look at that defensive line with Mike Hall Jr. and JT Tuimoloau, and I was really impressed. Now, the most impressive play by that defense, well, particularly that defensive line for me, was, again, JT Tuimoloau, who showed up in the fourth quarter against Penn State for a second straight year. Is becoming a meme for that dude. But on fourth and gotta have it, you got JTT lined up on Olu Fashanu, which is the way you draw it up if you're Penn State. We want our best player on their best player, and we're going to ask him to go beat us. And what did JTT do? But bull rush Fashanu right into Drew Aller's lap and force an incomplete pass. It was damn near an interception. That guy showed up big the way that that defense had been showing up big all day. This game was extremely tight, entirely too long for Ohio State fans, because you're thinking, if the Ohio State offense of even 2022, 2021, or 2020, 2019, take it all the way back to Ryan Day's first day on the job, showed up to play, you would expect them to have won this kind of a football game by 3 touchdowns because the defense has been so good. But the offense has an identity now. I thought it was going to be being balanced. No, I thought it was going to be the offensive line coming together. Not really. I thought it was going to be Travion Henderson, Maya Williams hitting everybody for a lick every now and again. No, not at all. I thought perhaps it was going to be Kyle McCord throwing the football. I'm halfway right. He went 22 of 35 for 286 with 2 TDs. However, the guy that makes Ohio State a national championship caliber team wears 1-8 and plays wide receiver. All right, so I want to set this up because there was a sequence of plays, particularly one drive, that solidified for me who Marvin Harrison Jr. is. I'm going to set this up. So after Chop Robinson goes down with an injury, we got to see Ohio State come out of a long timeout and then pick up a procedural penalty, which absolutely made Ohio State fans blow a gasket because you cannot do that. You can't pick up a procedural after a long timeout like that. And then Curtis Jacob came up with what we thought was going to be a play that changed the game because he was able to get heat on Kyle McCord, strip that man, pick up the ball, and run it back. For all the world, it looked like a turn of the tide with Penn State taking a lead in a very tight football game, only to see yellow laundry on the field in the secondary for Penn State. Come to find out, Kalen King could not guard Marvin Harrison Jr. We know this because he held him going across the middle. That play saved Ohio State not just 6 points, but got them the ball back and got them a new set of downs. But even then, they didn't look great. You brought in a guy like Devin Brown to try to get you an easy bucket at quarterback, maybe run that in. You pick up the stupid personal foul on him if you're Penn State. You give them another set of downs. And rather than just try to run the football in, which they did twice, we got to see Marvin Harrison Jr. set them up once again. That dude fought through defensive pass interference against Kalen King, who for all the world is going to be a first-round draft pick at corner, caught the football, put them in position to get their first TD of the game and third score of the game. I have a hard time looking at that and going, Marvin Harrison Jr. is dictating Manny Diaz's defense because we're not looking at it as if Manny Diaz is being dictated his defense by what Marvin Harrison Jr. is capable of or doing. The way I look at this is you can't play man coverage, single coverage, I should say, against Marvin Harrison Jr. You have to have a safety over the top, which means you can't bring an eighth man down in the box, which means you're going to allow Ohio State to run the ball a little bit more than they should be able to because you're so terrified of what 1-8 can do. And if he can go to work on your best cornerback, your best defensive back, and he's making plays through penalties, there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. That just means Marvin Harrison Jr. is the guy that is quite literally swinging the pendulum in Ohio State's favor. And then it showed up in a really interesting way on the stat sheet. And I want to get to some of that, but I need to lay that on pretty thick here, guys. Marvin Harrison Jr. out on the numbers had more to say about what plays Ryan Day was calling and what plays Manny Diaz was calling than anybody else on the football field. It's been a very long time since we have seen a wide receiver do that north of the Mason-Dixon line. And not since 2020 have we seen a wide receiver do that at the level that Marvin Harrison Jr. is doing it. His name is Devontae Smith. He led Alabama to a national title. The Buckeyes ran the ball on that drive successfully, right? And another reason is because you have to have that safety high. But I thought it was more interesting what Ryan Day thought he needed to express to Fox Sports' Jenny Taft. Just as he got done doing his interview, he came back because he had to say this on camera on national television.
I just think what the standard he has set here, his work ethic, and what he means to Ohio State, it's about leaving a legacy behind. And we're only halfway through the season, so I'm not going there yet, but he's on his way. I'm proud of him.
There's a lot to take away from those actions and what he had to say. I'm glad that he said it where Marvin could hear it and where we all could hear it, and you could hear how comfortable Ryan Day is with dialing up plays for Marvin Harrison Jr. He even said early in that same interview that he stays up late at night trying to think of ways to get that dude open because he knows what he means to their football team and why defensive coordinators are so terrified of him. Get into the stats a little bit on Marvin Harrison Jr. here for this day. He had over 100 yards receiving, 11 catches for 162 with a TD. That means he's got 5 100-yard receiving games in Ohio State's last 6, which gives him 12 100-yard receiving games in his career, which means he passes Chris Olave for second most in school history. And he is 2 behind David Boston for the most 100-yard receiving performances in a single season by a Buckeye. And that's just 14. We still got 6 7 games for Ohio State left to play, right? Like it's getting into the territory where you got to start talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. No disrespect, all love to my guy Gus Johnson. I'm just gonna put this out here. That man is not a Maserati. I'm a car guy. I'm a car guy. A Maserati will break down on you. A Maserati is untrustworthy. A Maserati's been untrustworthy since the 1950s when the last time it won Formula One. Okay. What Marvin Harrison Jr. is a McLaren Senna GTR LMS. Okay. For those of y'all that didn't read the brochure, like I did, that's 800 horsepower of the just 5 single cars on earth that can do what that Senna does. They only made 5 of them. That's how rare this man is. He ain't something you get off the factory line. He ain't something that you can put in my garage and I can make a little bit quicker for you. It is custom. They don't make them like him. And I get to say this over and over again because he just continues to be that good. He showed us who he was last year when Jackson Smith and Jigba went down early. We got to see what Marvin Harrison Jr. was actually capable of. And now this year, he looks like the first Biletnikoff Award winner at Ohio State since Terry Glenn. But also, you have to start talking about him in the Heisman Trophy conversation. You just have to. What he means to one of the best football teams on earth is what Devontae Smith meant to Alabama in their undefeated national championship year. We don't get to say that too often about wide receivers because it's a position that has been so dependent on what the quarterback can do or even what the offensive line will allow, let alone what the defense is going to allow. Usually you catch a bunch of passes, it's because people are comfortable leaving you in one-on-one matchups. Nobody's comfortable doing that with Marvin Harrison Jr., and yet and still he's putting up these gaudy numbers against top 10 opponents. Number 7 Penn State was undefeated until they ran up on the Buckeyes, until they ran up on Marvin Harrison Jr. If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.